our current subject on me, but we are talking about African Americans calling themselves African Americans, and should we be doing that, or should African Americans be doing that? I'm Jamaican Canadian, personally. So, in that video, I think you talk about African Americans not really knowing a lot about African culture or caring a lot about African culture, which to a degree is true. I would lump parts of my family in there. It's not just African Americans, it's Africans from the Caribbean and South America as well. Mm, you say though that we're taken as slaves to, North America, South America, the Caribbean. Therefore, we have no connection with African culture or history. I kind of disagree with you there, just on sort of like, I guess, kind of an academic basis, because there's a lot of precedents, a lot of history there, a lot of African culture and people and traditions did make it to the Caribbean. There's a lot of Africa in Jamaica, for example, and a lot of religious practices to South America. To a large degree, yes, in America, African culture was sort of erased or removed, but there's been a long history and tradition of black people, African people, trying to reclaim that culture and keep it. And because there's such a long history of it, you think of Marcus Garvey, you think of Frederick Douglass, you think of Malcolm X. This isn't, the connection with Africa is not a new thing, right? So there are a lot of Africans in North America that have grown up and lived and part of the American experience that have had a very strong connection with Africa, not just for political concern, not just politically, but socially and sort of consciousness-wise as well. Let me see. As far as the image or the portrayal of African Americans or blacks in general in, I guess, Western culture, I see that more as sort of a function of the media system itself rather than black culture, really. I mean, as far as like the gangster image goes, that I think goes to more the coon image or maybe the blackface that you would have seen in like maybe the 40s when white actors would put on black faces or paint their faces black and act in sort of like clowning ways and ways that sort of portrayed black people as very stupid and sort of very happy because happy with their very small lot in life. And that sort of coon image, I think, still follows through to this day. And like sort of heavy gangsterism image. Yeah. So I find what you're not going to find on like the CNNs or the Fox News or whatnot are a lot of Harlem Renaissance authors, a lot of the originators of hip hop that were about consciousness raising uh, and lyrical skill. A lot of black musical history with related to the old slave songs, yeah, gospel songs, the original rock and roll, blues, jazz, all these like big art forms that were really created by black people and African Americans, is not going to be portrayed in the Western media system, if you will. So the fact that I don't see a lot of intelligent black or intelligent African dialogue is one of the reasons that I don't watch, cable TV news or a lot of media system outlets. I think you're going to see a lot of interesting responses to your video on, say, YouTube, which is like very independent, right? Like there's no higher power controlling the content of YouTube that we currently know of. So I mean that is what I see as portraying or pushing out sort of gangster image of black people in North America. In the same way that the images we get of in North America that we get of Africans is always very primitive, very disease-ridden, war-torn, nothing linked to any higher human capacities or higher humanism. So anybody with a grain of intelligence, as Spike Lee once said, gets very frustrated with that and doesn't take that at all seriously. Now the challenge for us is that we have to sort of work around that, because I don't think so much that Africans in North America and the African continent and South America, Caribbean, are don't share any culture. Like, from what I can see from throughout history, is that we have extremely strong cultural connection. What we're missing is a strong consciousness connection. Um, in a day-to-day living, where I know I was taught, I grew up in Toronto, in Canada. Were taught nothing about African culture, nothing about African history, African humanities. Africa was a sort of no man's land, a desolate place. This is what was portrayed in, like, this is the education system where young minds are formed. So this is in North America, and I imagine South America and the Caribbean as well. This is what a lot of black people or people of African descent are fighting against. So I imagine, and it's going to be the same in Africa as well, because the colonial system really fucked over all the nations, in Africa, in South America, the Congo, the Gold Coast, and so on. So I mean, for example, hold on one second. I mean, I've mentioned some big figures like Malcolm X and Marcus Garvey, who regularly, who wanted to actualize their reclamation of African culture, socially, politically, economically, and so on. But take for example, this fellow is a British Jamaican fellow. His name is Paul Crooks. Right? Let's see the title. He wrote this book called Ancestors, in which, well, I'll read the back for you. In the quest for his family tree, cruelly uprooted 300 years ago by the inhumanity of slavery in the early 1990s, Paul Crooks undertook research which led him from London to the Caribbean and from there to the Gold Coast of Africa, where his forebears' story began. The facts he uncovered form the basis of this gripping novel. Blah, 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 and so on. It gives a small description of what the book's about. But he factually traced his ancestors back to Africa. This is actually one of the projects I want to do in the next year or two. And there's a lot of black people in North America doing stuff like this that you're not going to see in the media system, because it's just not about us, right? So I don't have a problem with African Americans calling themselves African Americans. I think it's a good thing. I think there's a very strong cultural and historical and political connection of Africans in the continent, North America, South America, and the Caribbean working together. What I think we lack is a strong consciousness connection, where there's not a strong sort of social or economic imperative for a lot of black people to send their kids to school in Africa, to invest in Africa, which is still happening to some degree in South America, South Africa, and Ghana, and so on. But anyways, that's, I guess, all I have to say, and those are my 2 cents. All right, ciao.